Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And as business people, we all know that sometimes we just have to keep plugging on, even when we sound like death warmed over, right? And so I have a horrible cold today, but that's all right, because people are tuning in to listen to my guest anyway, and not to me. So we're going to have a little bit of a different program today. We are going to talk about business because I'm interviewing a fellow podcaster. How fun is that? We love that. But what she podcasts about is an extremely serious topic. And so I'm just going to warn everybody, little adult theme here. But it is something that I think everyone absolutely needs to be listening to, because the problem is too many of us aren't. And I'm probably going to ask some naive questions because I don't know a lot about this, but I figure if I don't know, others don't either. So I'm going to go ahead and ask those questions. So anyhow, please join me in welcoming my guest, Adriann Barrett, to our program today. Welcome, Adriann. How are you?
I'm doing well, Deb. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm
Great.
excited to be here.
I love it. We met at PodFest, which was so much fun. It was one of those things where we tend to think, especially as podcasters, that we're just in our own little holes and we're doing our podcast, and to actually go and talk with 1,500-ish, right? That other people about what they do was absolutely wonderful. And I can't wait to go again. But that's not why people are listening today. So let me tell people, excuse me, just a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So Adriann Barrett is the host of the Crime Theories podcast, and she is on a mission to bring the missing home. So Adriann, please tell us a little bit more about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So, well, first things off, there are over 600,000 people just in the United States that go missing every year.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
600,000.
Yes. So with that, I mean, just think about that. Like, that is your neighbors, that's your family members, that's your loved ones. And the thing is they might be in that danger zone of being kidnapped or murdered without you even knowing it.
Right.
Like, so, well, where I got to today, it took me a long time to be open and to talk about this, but I was 16 years old and I got pregnant by a 20-year-old who was my boyfriend at the time. And my mom is very religious, and she basically said, look, I'm either going to call the cops on him for, child molestation, which she should have, or you can choose to be an adult and get married. And I felt as though I didn't have an option. Mm-hmm. Because to me at that time, it was like, oh, this is my boyfriend. I love him. And
can't have him go to jail.
Mm-hmm. Right. I can't do that to him. So I got married. Mm-hmm. And, well, this marriage was, let's just say it wasn't a happy one. Mm-hmm. There was downstairs in our bedroom, there was actually a hole in the wall with a little chain, and he would chain me up almost every day. Mm-hmm. I wasn't allowed to go do normal things.
He was controlling is an understatement.
Yes. Mm-hmm. He would constantly tell me that I was his property and that I couldn't leave, because technically he was my guardian. Right. He wasn't just
because you were 16.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go get my own home. I couldn't go get my own place to rent. I couldn't go get my own
Mhm.
utilities. I couldn't do anything.
Mhm.
And at being pregnant at a young age, he threw me down the stairs so hard that, I mean, I had bruises up and down. He refused to take me to the hospital, even though I was pretty sure I broke a rib. And at that time, I ended up losing the baby.
Mm.
And because of that, and because I was bleeding, miscarriaging and everything, then he was like, okay, we can go. And I just told them that I tripped and fell down the stairs, and they let me go home. But not only did he do that, he sold me to his brother for sex and violence. And he also would sell me to random strangers. There was some times I remember, I was in the car. I don't even know how I got there in the car. I was in the back seat, and then I'd wake up, and then I'm at someone's house being carried to someone's home. There was actually a few places here in Salt Lake that he would take me downtown, and they were in what looked like abandoned buildings, but they weren't. Up at the top of those, they had a whole bunch of illegal gambling, and other girls, including myself, were up there. And sometimes I remember I think I was in different states when he would take me. Eventually he got caught because he was doing this to a 14-year-old girl, and she told her parents. And so the parents went full force, like, we've got to figure out who this guy is. Well, they found out that there were pictures of her, as well as me and other young women, on the internet, and they got the FBI involved, and he had been selling these images. So the FBI broke into my house, and I had anxiety, and I'm freaking out. I don't know who these people are. They're in my house. I locked myself in the bathroom. They're like, you need to come out. And I'm like, no, I'm not going anywhere with you guys. And this was July from when I turned 18. So I was in that for a whole 2 years from July. And so I just barely turned 18. And they literally arrested me and treated me like I was not the victim, that I had done this. Granted, they probably didn't know at the time, but then I mean, after I got my fingerprints, as I was in the holding cell, and they talked to me for a minute, because I didn't want to talk to him. I was like, no, I don't know who you are. I don't know.
You had been
you're
through
just
so
terrified.
much, you trusted no one.
Exactly. Like, I was absolutely just terrified to be with anyone. And the fact that the police, like, literally, they had like 3 or 4 people grabbing me, like, hands behind my back, and then my feet, because I didn't want to go.
And this made, obviously, the situation worse.
Yeah. They thought I was maybe because I was living in that house, like, because he wasn't home at that time. But they thought maybe I was part of
you were either
that.
in charge or part of it.
Yeah. And then they found out that I just barely turned 18, and looked at the pictures and like, oh, she's one of them. So, but my mom constantly asked me, she's like, why didn't you just come home? I felt like I couldn't come home.
She did not give you that option. Or you at least felt that she didn't give you that option.
Well, that and her previous husband, she was married to someone else by this time. But her previous husband had sexually assaulted me, and nothing came of it when
So you weren't safe there either.
So I didn't personally feel that. Like, and me and my mom, we've talked it all out. I don't have any resentment towards her now, but I did for a long time.
Oh, understandably.
So much resentment. So that's where this comes from, because I'm like, I could have easily been one of the missing or murdered. Like, the thing is that to make appearances, we still went to family parties. We still went to, I separated myself from my family. I didn't really talk to anyone that
Mhm.
much, but they'd be like, hey, we're getting together for Easter. So I'd come over with him.
Mhm.
But I mean, I didn't really feel safe with my
Mhm.
family anyway.
Right.
So I don't know if they really noticed that I acted
No, they probably
any
thought
different or
teenage
not.
girl. Eh.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So, you know, no one no one knew for a while until, he started getting charges and stuff. And
Mhm.
my sister came forward and she's like, that girl was my friend. It was actually her friend that
Mhm.
that stood up and
Mhm.
told her parents. And I
Mhm.
am very thankful for her
Mhm.
that she was able to
Right.
step up and do that, because
Mhm.
I felt like I couldn't.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I mean, technically I had my own freedom a little bit. Like, I still went
Well,
out a
but
little
when
bit,
you're
but
that brutalized in so many different ways, like we said, you trust no one. You
mhm.
assume they're not going to believe you.
Yep.
And they should have, I'm guessing that you were thinking they should have protected you in the first place, and they didn't. So, and I'm also guessing that there was obviously a lot of emotional abuse with him saying,
Hmm.
you're not worthy. There's a reason you are here. Nobody cares about you. And
Yep.
so you thought, there's no point.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of that is pretty much, yeah, how I felt a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time. So with that, I know that I could have easily been one of these missing people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why too, that, I focus a lot on these smaller cases, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are like, oh, cover the bigger ones. And I do once in a while, but
Right.
most of the time
But
I
the
don't
bigger
shine the
ones get a
lights on
lot of
them.
media
They
coverage.
already
Mm-hmm.
do. I mean, like John Bonet.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Almost everyone, even if you're not into true crime,
Oh,
they're like,
well, I was
I
living
know who
in
she is.
Colorado when that happened, and
Okay.
there was you could not turn on the TV. Now, this was, long enough ago that we didn't have nearly as much, and we certainly had no social media or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, it was what dominated
Mm-hmm.
the headlines, and part of that was, and I'm sure this is, and we hear about this all the time too. She was this cute little blonde girl,
Yep.
and certainly did not fit the description of a lot of other, um especially young girls who are victimized. But yeah, she was that
Mm-hmm.
cute little blonde beauty pageant girl, and
Yep.
everybody went, oh gosh, we have to know more about what's going on with her. you know any other factors had been there, people, like you said, it would have gotten no coverage. If it had been an
Right.
older girl, different ethnicity, that part of the story was because they were so wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that is the problem, is when your average young people disappear, people, it's not a media story.
Right.
She's not the
Well,
cute young blonde.
Well, honestly, if I went missing, they're like, oh, it's just a troubled teen.
Right.
Like, let's face it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, that's what they're gonna think.
Mm-hmm.
Or even like later on, they'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, she's just they would think I was a prostitute, even though I wasn't seeing
Right.
any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, so it's like, so what? Like, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these missing cases are something like that. And people are just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, like,
Right.
it's not
Well,
something to cover.
and there's always the obviously misperception where, situations like this, or like abused wives, it's always, well, you could have done something and you could have gotten out. No.
No.
There's so many circumstances, like you said, where were you going to go? I mean, aside from the streets, which, yeah, that was an option, not a real good option. um but yeah, it's, the choice to leave is quite often not really there.
Right.
We, from our perfect little worlds, look at it and go,
Hmm.
well, I don't understand, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you tell
Exactly.
somebody? Well, it's a much more complicated story than that.
Exactly. Well, I remember even I did tell one of my aunts that like I was just a little bit more it's my mom's sister, and I asked her, I was like, can I come stay with you, because things aren't just, they're just not doing well here, when I was in that situation. And she told me, she's like, well, you know what, there's always a women's shelter, that's always an option.
Oh, well, that was nice.
And the thing is I understand like not enabling someone. Yes.
Right.
Yes. I mean, I've got,
yeah, you can't come and stay just because you weren't happy with what you had for dinner.
Right. Or I understand too, like my sister right now, she is addicted to drugs. And so I've made it clear to her, I'm like, I'm here for you, I'll come get you. Like if you need me to like get you out of your home or anything like that. But I also told her, I mean, she called me from jail one time and was like, hey, will you bail me out? I was like, no, you're not, I know you're not going to pay it. I'm like, I love you, but you know what? I know you're safe in jail.
Yeah.
At least I know you're
and not using
there.
For the most part. I mean, I know there are ways, but
right. So there's that. Like, I don't know. So that's kind of why I started, because I was like, you know what? There are so many people that are not talked about. And so many stories that just don't have any light to them. And the sad thing is if the family decides not to talk and to sweep it under the rug, it will go away.
Right.
I mean, the missing information will be there publicly, but for the most part, it just is swept under the rug.
Right.
I just talked to this woman.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The sad realization is part of it is because there's so many.
Yeah.
If it's one or two, then it gets a lot of coverage. If it's 20, 30, 40, it's like, we can't cover them all.
Right. Yeah, that is true too. Like I talked to this mom, and her son was flat out like murdered. Like they first of all said that, oh, it's just a car accident, but the car was just like slammed into the wall and it had bullet holes all over it. I'm like, okay, that is not, that's not just a car crash. Like, okay. And I was talking to her and I'm like, and she's like, no, he was definitely not in a gang, didn't have like hardly any friends that he hung out with anyways, because I know that there is gang activity out here. So, but I was like, okay, so who do you think did this and why? And she was hesitant to talk to me at first.
Well, she's probably scared.
Right. Well, and I asked her, I'm like, have you talked to any? She's like, no, I just trust the police and that they'll do what needs to be done. And then I kind of mentioned her, I'm like, well, there was Cammie Shepherd that was in a manhole and they said that she went down there because she was cold, but she's like 96 pounds. There's no way she could have lifted that. And her house was 400 feet away. So,
right.
But then one of the news coverage came out and posted a whole story on it saying that it was gang related and all this. And I asked her about it and she's like, they didn't even contact me. They didn't even let me know that they were going to run that. I'm like, that's so shady too. I like to reach out to the parents or the victim's family and ask them to first, what's your side of it?
Right.
Because I know it can get twisted. So, and the thing is though, I mean, before she just said, no, I'm just going to let the police handle it. And then she finally came forward and said, okay, I'll come talk to you. What she thinks happened is her son got a job and he had saved up all of his money from the summer. And then he flashed it on social media. So they think it was a targeted hit. So she finally came out and talked to me about it. But like, if you're just reading what the media says, the media says it's mafia. Well,
and he was in a gang. He deserved it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I feel like there's so much more to when you actually get to talking to real people and figure out who they were as a person. And like, they went missing. Who do you think did it? Or do you think that they just walked away? Because there are cases that people just
there's obviously runaways.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to this one guy. He went missing for 7 years, and then he came back.
Hmm.
His sister never stopped looking for him. He ran away when he was a teenager. And we asked him, we're like, where were you? And he's like, I was on the streets the whole time. He was so seriously, like, take a look around you. And we asked him, like, did you do any jobs? And he's like, yeah, I did. I worked for a few businesses that didn't require, they just paid me under the table.
Right.
And so I'm saying, like, you know, as small businesses, there are things that we can do to help the missing and also look out for them. And there are some people that don't want to be found, or they don't know how to be found again. They're embarrassed about about coming home and letting people know that they're safe, because they did run away and they didn't want to deal with what they were dealing with now. But years come later, they're like, okay, I'm ready to come home. I don't know how to come home though.
Are they going to accept me?
Right. That's what this boy's biggest fear was. His name was Aubrey, and he came back. So apparently he ended up making a social media under another name and just had a few pictures, but his sister was like determined, like every day she's always searching for him and then looking on social media, seeing, like, doing reverse image searching to see if she can find anything that looks like him. And she did. She found him. She's like, well, he cut his hair. He looked totally different because, like, he had a, you know, mustache. And
but yeah, if you take his other pictures, you can make them look the same.
Yeah. And so she contacted him and she's like, you look a lot like my brother. And the thing is she doesn't want to scare him off either, you know? And she just kind of kept track of it. And finally he responded and he's like, yeah, it's me. I think I'm ready to come home. I just don't know how. I don't know. I mean, because mom's obviously gonna be so mad at me.
Right.
Here's the thing is, your family, they love you, like, for the most part. I mean, I know you have all your issues, but, like, people out there that they would rather you come home to them instead of in a box.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and because they need to know, are you even still alive? You know, and
it's part of the grieving process for them. Like, they need to know, like, I mean, I never stopped looking for you. I mean, one of the cases I talked to, her sister's name is Andrea Knabel, and I talked to Erin Knabel, and she's like, I hope that, you know, she's still out there. She's very trusting though. She would have gone, like, hitchhiking with someone if she would, like, she's very just open and friendly. But, like, she's gotten a lot of backlash because someone did a documentary and cut and paste a lot of things that just, like, weren't true. So, I mean, we kind of set the facts a little straight on that, because she's like, that didn't help. That just
made her seem like the bad person.
Right. Yeah, it does. It makes her seem like, you know, she did something bad and she was hiding and she was mischievous. Yes, you know what? We all have our secrets. Also, like, one big thing about her is that, like, everyone's like, she was on meth, and she's like, no, she wasn't on meth. She had scars all over her face, but that's because her and her sister both suffer from eczema on the face.
Okay.
So, like, so people thought that she had meth or something because she was, like, picking at her face, and she's like, let me just set this straight. Like, I don't know that she has been doing it, maybe because, you know, but I don't think so. And I'm going to tell you, from a teenager, we've had to do this because we just have eczema that goes on our faces. So, like, yeah. And I mean, another thing to think about is when these people are missing, if they are missing and trying to go missing, they will probably change their appearance in some way.
Right. Because they don't want to be found.
Right. And so that's why I mean, it's hard to, like, sometimes some cases, if you see someone and you think it's that person, the best thing you can do is just, like, talk to them a little bit. Like, don't scare them off. Like, just be like, hey, and let them know that I'm your friend and I mean, we help out with programs and stuff. Like we have what's called, first off, it's the poster program, which is exactly what it sounds like. You can post your posters of these missing people in your business. That helps out a lot.
Right.
I mean, and then we go through volunteer groups where we'll post like photos and stuff just up and down streets, signs. We also volunteer at like homeless shelters and stuff because you never know who's going to walk through those doors. You never know.
Right.
Plus then you're helping them as well.
Right.
So, but that's one thing that we always do. I mean, another thing you can do if someone is like missing in your area, volunteer. Be like, hey, you can come and search my building because you never know what you're going to find.
Oh, yeah. If you're in a big enough building, there's a lot of hiding places.
Right. Well, and then we can that's just one extra place that we've eliminated, you know. We end up finding someone, like it was here in my neighborhood-ish, but we were doing a search and come to find out that the guy ran once he found out that we were notified, hey, like there's a missing child. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go look and see if I can find something. The guy apparently hid her and locked her in a shed that wasn't his. It was just a random neighbor's. She was there. No one knew that she was like in there, and then he took off. We ended up catching him, but we found her alive. Like, so I mean, and the first 48 hours are definitely crucial, but it doesn't mean that you can't find people 2 years later.
Right. Oh yeah, we those are the stories we hear about in the media.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. It definitely is. Yeah. We hear about all the ones that, they find years later, or, they're just hiding them somewhere. I mean, you never know. I mean, even if you're a landlord, if you give like the police permission to do a thorough search and you know that someone might be missing in that area, just like be like, hey, if you need it, you have my permission. That helps out a lot too,
and you're not invading the privacy of your tenants, whether it's, residential or commercial, by allowing that. You're helping hopefully to find someone who is missing.
Right. And I mean, and if you are one of those businesses that is in that area, you can ask. I mean, they need permission from you as the landlord to be able to be like, hey, is this all right? Can we do this? Like, that definitely helps out a lot. I mean, we also have something that's called like the Safeguard Briefing Program. This actually deals with like kids and adults for either functioning like to seek improvement of the well-being. So there is so like I said, like there are some people that are missing. They just don't want to be found. So we help them out with that. Like, if they need support and shelter. Some people don't want you to tell them, like tell media or the family, hey, this is where I am, because they're also in fear of their lives.
Right. They may have left an abusive situation or, something along those lines. And there is no way they're going back into that.
Right. And they don't want their family to get hurt. Sometimes it's a fear of that. Like, I don't want my family to get hurt, and I'm leaving to help them. And sometimes, people will come out and say that, like, hey, like, yeah, okay, you found me. I don't want to be found.
Right.
So we do have safeguarding briefing programs where we actually like advise, the police and stuff, like, hey, this person here is a missing person, but they're okay.
Right.
And
you can close that file or
right. Right. And I mean, and there are some times where people don't want to be found by their family, but their case is closed. And the police as long as it's not a minor, they don't have to tell people. Like sometimes. So there is that. I mean, we try to, get them down from being so scared and
Right.
contacting hopefully their family members and stuff. But at least then we can like close that case and be like, okay, yes, reported missing, but not actually missing. So there, there are programs like that. And actually there are like safeguarding is what we call it, but we can actually brief to your business and your employees if you see someone that you think might be a missing person on how to deal with them and how to go about that. There actually have been a few missing people too that, are in businesses. And I had someone come up to me and he was like, what do I do? My employee who normally shows up to work every single day just stopped messaging, like no text message, isn't answering her phone. What do I do in this situation? Like, because this isn't like her.
Right.
But I also
then
don't
you do
want
a wellness check.
Exactly.
Or that's you don't. Thing. You know.
Right. I feel like, you know what, even doing it just to make sure, you never know what someone is going through.
I mean, or they might have fallen. There's so many reasons why those things happen. And I think the problem is we don't want to intrude. We don't want to be wrong. And we certainly don't want to say, hey, I'm not sure that child is supposed to be with those people, because what if we are wrong? Well, what if we're right? I mean, that's the way to think about it is, if you're wrong, then you apologize and you say, I am terribly sorry. She told me in the bathroom that there was this situation or whatever. I mean, you don't want to get her in trouble, but yeah, I would, this is definitely where it is much better to err on the side of caution, because you can always apologize, but, just think if you could have helped and you didn't, and then you find out later, oh my gosh, this person I saw in the rest area, on the highway, I could have helped, and all of those things. But again, so you have to apologize. Better than reading about something horrific later.
Exactly. Like, I mean, I get it too. Like, kids will scream and yell and
oh yeah. Mama's beating me, right?
But it's always like, or they're just like freaking out. I don't want to go with you. Like, whatever the case is, it's always better to be safe and make sure that person, and you know what? And if they're an understanding person, they will understand, like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I am their mom, but you know what? I understand where you're coming from. And thank you for being so concerned. There might be some people that are snappy about it, but like, the more snappy they are, the more
then there might be an issue, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I feel like, a lot of people, they want to keep to themselves. They don't want to offend
judge.
They don't want to intrude.
Forbid.
Yeah. But I had someone in his business, and so he ended up, he's like, it's been 3 days. Do I like call her? Like, what do you think's going on? And I'm like, I'm like, you've already called her. She's not, nothing's happening there. I'm like, you call and do a well care check, or you go to her house and you and knock on her door.
Right.
And he's like, well, I live, they were out of state. Like,
I'm too far away.
Well, they were doing remote work. So I get it. Like, they're in a different state. And I'm like, I will even call on your behalf if you want. And he's like, okay. So I called on his behalf, did a well care check on her, and she was gone.
Ooh.
She is a missing person. We got in contact with her family. Her family hadn't heard from her in almost a week. And I was like, okay, then we need to make it.
It needs to be official now.
Yeah. Because it had been 3 days from work. They haven't talked to her in a week. It's not like her to miss work. And then he had like all this raging guilt. Like, well, what if I called the first day?
Right.
And I'm like, you can't think like that. But now again, though, be extra cautious. if you have a worker that is normally, I mean, even if a worker, like, I mean, who knows? They might even be more likely to answer your phone calls and more likely to be there on time. If you're like, I'm gonna, call welfare
Yeah.
check on
I
you if you
need to
don't
hear
answer
from you
me.
or else kind of thing.
They might. I mean, and then at the same time, it shows that
Mm-hmm.
you care. But
Right.
because now she's officially a missing person. She's
Mm-hmm.
almost been missing for 2 months now.
You know,
And
and
he's like,
yeah.
she had one of their credit cards too, and it hadn't been
Mm-hmm.
used. And I'm like, well, just
Keep watching it. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Instead of deactivating it, he's like, I'm gonna see if anything
Mm-hmm.
comes up.
Right.
So,
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
but we don't know.
Right.
There's nothing. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
it's
like,
not
I don't
like you
know.
went and there was blood and there was not an obvious reason for her to not be there.
Her phone was there. It was
Which now
dead.
see, and of course that is anymore one of the biggest, anyhow, from my
Right.
interpretation, right? My naivete here. We don't go anywhere without our phones. And
My
so
grandma
for
doesn't even
someone
go
to
out.
leave their phone,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and it used to be, especially for women, was her purse is there or not there? Well, everything is on my phone. I can pretty much be doing a great deal of what I need to do on my phone. I can
Yeah.
have ways of identification that are on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just saying, hey, her purse is there, and of course, you can easily just take a driver's license out and put it in your pocket, and so then your purse is still sitting on the counter. But
Right.
yeah, for someone to leave their phone anymore, that is pretty much a really big red flag.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. I'm like, I mean, she did leave her purse and stuff too there. It was all there.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing looked like it had been amiss. Her car was at her
Right.
house.
She just literally disappeared.
Left, like as
Mm-hmm.
poof, gone.
Yeah.
She lived alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, the fact that you noticed that, like, I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
he came to me and he's like, hey, so what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
She's been missing for 3
Mm-hmm.
days. I haven't heard from her. That's
Mm-hmm.
unusual. If he, and I'm not putting any blame on him, but if he contacted us the first day,
Right.
we might have been able
Right.
to find something
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
sooner.
we all see that on TV, right? The trail goes cold. The longer you wait, but that comes back to, you don't want to intrude,
Yep.
all of those things. But I think it's so important to really talk, especially from a business perspective, because we do have so many people who are working remotely.
Mm-hmm.
That's just going to be a fact of life now. And clearly, if they're not physically in the office, that's but yeah, I mean,
Right.
for them to just not, and so I think it is something that managers, co-workers need to be even more cognizant of. And let's be honest, especially of women.
Yes.
I've had co-workers before who I absolutely loved because they knew that I lived alone. And I mean, I remember one time he said, if we ever go 24 hours without hearing from you, you can expect a knock on your door.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be as mad as you want to be. But this is, and of course he was an older gentleman, and all of these things. And I just thought it was the sweetest thing in the world that that there was that level of caring. But when we're home now working, it is difficult to, because it's pretty easy to go, hey, she's not at her desk. But
Right.
and especially if you're not doing Zooms, and not, if you're just, because not everybody is doing things like that every day. So it is kind
Right.
of easy for there to be a longer period of time where you just don't have contact with them. And especially depending on what they're doing. Maybe, you weren't expecting emails from them or something like that. But, I think it's something that we just need to be more cognizant of. And then I think we also
Mm-hmm.
need to be watching them, say
Yeah.
we are, watching them on Zoom, and just in general, we talked about this. I had a guest on, we talked about it when COVID was really at its peak and we were all locked in our houses and it was horrible and awful. And we all started out being very professional on camera, right? And then it kind of went downhill from there. And it was one of those things where people were really telling managers, owners, pay attention. Were they normally this person who, never did their Zoom without, a nice shirt on, hair combed, all of that. Now all of a sudden they're not. Is there something that's because there were so many mental health issues that went along with being shut in your house? Mm-hmm. So, you never know what you can pick up, and it could be that there's somebody there. And, and we've got this little tiny window, and so, what's going on? And again, yeah, you might be intruding, but it's better to be safe. And you might not be able to come out and say, hey, are you okay? Is there somebody there with you?
Right.
Because that might actually put them in danger. But, there are certainly ways where you can think, hey, there's something going on.
Yeah, definitely. There are signs that you can definitely pick up, especially if you do Zoom, then you can see features and you can tell most of the time if they're talking to someone next to them.
Yeah. Are they kind of, looking off screen and things like that? And just, don't be afraid to ask. It's again, you can apologize later. It's funny. We're having work done here at the house. And so I was thinking about a time when we were working on our house back in Colorado, and I managed to use one of the little fancy pieces of equipment and it was one of these things where my husband, I remember him looking at me saying, don't do that. And as he's saying that, this handle pops and catches me right across the face.
Oh gosh.
Of course, broke my nose, slicker and anything. It was the funny, it sounded like a tin can, right? And so, we go off to the emergency clinic, but it looked exactly like somebody had hit me with a baseball bat, because it was this diagonal that started above one eye, got my nose, and then of course went down my cheek. And I bruised exactly like that. It just looked like that. And I must have had at least 4 people who came into the exam room. Now tell us how you did this. Did it to myself. And part of me was thinking, well, my husband's sitting here. And of course I knew what they were doing. They were doing basically a welfare check, had he hit you in the face. But I was thinking, but he's in the room. But of course they were also watching, okay, did he answer the questions? Did I look to him to see if I answered the right way? All of these various things. It wasn't just that they were coming in and talking to me. They were picking up on all of these other things. And I remember hearing one of them go out in the hall and say, no, it's okay. She did do this to herself. And I thought, but it was an annoyance that they kept asking me that, but I knew they were asking out of concern. Right. And so, I had the prettiest bruise. It was pretty funny, but yeah, they were concerned. And it is those things where if we think there is something going on, then ask. It is perfectly fine, again, to say, oh my gosh, I'm really sorry. But I was also wondering about child trafficking. And again, this is something so far out of my realm of knowledge that for one thing, I just don't understand it, and which is probably not a bad thing, because that means I've never really been around it. But what are things that we should look for? Like we see signs in, say, the bathrooms at, I'm not that far from Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. And so, there's always signs in the airport there that are, if you see this, all these things. What are signs and things that we should be looking for? Because especially as business people, we're going to be in a lot of different places. So, what are things that we should look for that might kind of set off our spidey senses?
Yeah. And not even kids, but adults get sex trafficked a lot through the airport, a lot. But with kids, some are flat out crying. And they'll still hold that person's hand because they think they're going to find their mom or dad. Right. Or they think that I can't say anything. I don't know what's going to happen. Right. And
they've been told who knows what. by the person. You know, your parents are dead. Your parents gave you to us, all those various things.
Or they're like, oh, well, we're going to go find them.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to take you to them. They told me to hold your hand. So a kid crying, I mean, it could be simply they're tired and ornery and
we can kind of pick up on some of those things.
Right. But another thing is like if they just like randomly like pick them up and they're like running away and they just like pick them up and hold them really close, like they are death gripping them. That is something too. I mean, most of the time parents are going to be a little gentler with their kids most of the time. I mean, it also depends, but I've actually seen, one girl was telling me this man just threw her across her shoulder so that she couldn't do anything. Like that is a telltale sign, especially for an adult, like, hey, yeah, no, you don't.
Right. No, you don't treat somebody like that.
Yeah. And for little kids, I mean, if you go up to them and you ask them like, hey, is this person your mom or dad? And if they say no, that's a big sign. Sometimes
now if they say no, it's my aunt, but if they're just no,
but they don't know, or like who
they don't know what to say they are.
Yeah, if they don't know who this person is, if you go, hey, so who is this? If they don't flat out say, oh, this is my uncle, whatever, like, because if they don't know, they'll most of the time they'll stammer. They'll just like look and be like, and then the other person will answer.
They're going to say,
them.
I'm so and so.
And I mean, that can be, a shy kid too, but it's always better to know. So my son another thing too, if your child is under the age of 2, they have to have a birth certificate. I know this because my ex tried to take my son and take him to California without my knowledge. And they said, no, like, dude, you don't have a birth certificate. You're not even on the birth certificate.
You don't have permission.
You don't have permission. Yeah. So if they're under the age of 2, at least here in the United States, they have to have a birth certificate. So that's always good. But I mean, after that point, after the checkpoint of, going through security, then be aware because they could just grab them and take them on a different flight. That is definitely possible. But always I always people watch though, like you can see, I mean, because there are instances where we've heard that like mom looks away for a second, has baby in the baby carrier, and someone comes and picks them up and walks off.
Right.
So there are instances like that. And to just like always keep your eye out for people, like just watch. I mean, people watch. If, a kid is acting like they don't belong with that person and they are acting standoffish, then it doesn't hurt to ask or go up to someone and be like, hey, that doesn't look right. So I even did it. It was a year or 2 ago when there was this young girl hanging out with this guy. Like she was probably 14 or 15 and he was probably 25, 26.
Yeah, that's a red flag.
It was definitely was. So I went ahead and was like, hey, that doesn't look right. I'm just concerned about it. They're like, oh, do you know anything? Do you know her? And I'm like, no, but it just, they were by themselves holding hands. And I was like, they just looked into age difference. And who knows? It could be just fine.
Right.
Like, I mean, you saw, my sister's husband is very young looking because he had cancer when he was young. So it could have been something like that. Right. But it's always better to be safe.
Right.
So,
and again, we can always apologize, but it's one of those things. And like you said, we need to be alert. But of course, the bad, say at a park, or at the airport or something, the people who are the sexual predators, the predators in general, all of those, they look like everybody else. I mean,
Yep.
it's not like they've got the red flag saying, "Hey, I'm a pervert." Right? And so that's the hard part. But I'm assuming there are behaviors, that you kind of watch. Like, is there somebody who's continually around the playground and clearly doesn't have kids?
Yeah.
Things like that. I mean, there's just things that, and I mean, I joke about spidey sense, but I think we have that.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's that we watch too much CSI and all of those various things, but I think we do recognize in many cases that doesn't feel right. And we need to go with that instinct.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and you know what? Most of the time, they are the most normal looking people.
Right.
It's not the
Mhm.
people that look scary.
Right.
It's
Yeah, the
normally not
people
those
who look
people.
scary are usually the nice ones.
Right. Right. It's normally, Ted Bundy here,
Mhm. Right. I know. Yeah.
So
I mean,
as
when
I
you
got
look
my
at,
thanks
yeah,
for the TED
yeah,
Talk shirt on.
you look at those, and yeah, I mean, it's a lot of times it's the most handsome, or with women, it is, they just look like every other mom that's there.
That's another thing is
Mhm.
that these sexual predators will have women.
Mhm.
They like have brainwashed them
Right.
or, taken them, and then they get other women to
Mhm.
befriend them or children because
Mhm.
children are more likely to
Right.
trust them.
Mhm.
So, and another thing though, they hang around, a lot of times they'll hang around a single mom with kids if they're going to
Right.
take a kid.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
she's got four that
he's
she's having to
got
pay attention to. She might not
exactly,
even notice that she's only got three.
exactly. And then they hang around, a lot of times they hang around the bathrooms too, and they'll
Mhm.
just grab one like as they
Mhm.
come out.
Yeah, bathrooms
So,
are always tricky places, especially in big public places, because you go in different stalls, and so
yep,
somebody might come out early, and then you have the really tricky thing of say you have dad who's really dad, and he's got his young daughter there. Well, he's not going to take her into the men's room.
right,
Depending on the age of a young boy, mom might not be able to take him into the ladies' room. The nice thing is we do have family restrooms and things like that. But yeah, I mean, there are times where there are children that are in there in a completely innocent way, but they're by themselves.
hmm, yep. And someone will just take them, like
Mm-hmm.
say mom or dad's not done yet, but
Right.
the kid is, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll come out first, and
Mm-hmm.
someone will just grab
Mm-hmm.
them. And especially in an airport,
Mm-hmm.
they're gone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've done things where, like in a restroom, usually, where you see the child by themselves, sink or whatever. I'll
Mhm.
just stay. And, and I can be fussing with my hair. I can wash my hands 900 times. I mean, all these things until it's clear that, mom was in the stall and there she is. Or, and then if they're in there long enough, it's like, are you in here by yourself? Where's your mom? And of course the scary part is we don't want to you have to be very cautious because you don't want to like grab the child and say I'm gonna, because then the child's gonna scream
Right.
and all of those things. But yeah, I mean sometimes it is just a matter of just watching. Okay, then when mom comes out of the stall, I dry my hands and away I go. And I never said anything. I never, but I
Right.
was also going to make sure that it didn't seem like somebody was going to come and grab that child.
Right. Because yeah, you never know.
Mm-hmm. And again, it never ever hurts to ask. And then you kind of go from there.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Well, what are some other tips and things that you have for people, especially for businesses? What can we be looking for or doing? I'm of the generation where we had the milk cartons, the half-gallon milk cartons, right? Have you
Yeah.
seen this child? But you talked about posters. What are some other
Yeah.
things that businesses can be doing?
So some businesses we actually you're more than welcome to like donate and everything. And I'll put this on my website. But we had juice company actually end up putting out 50,000 missing person posters.
Wow.
Just on their juices. I mean,
Mhm.
you know what? They're already doing that.
Mhm.
Like, you're already selling it. Might
Mhm.
as well get a little extra exposure out there. We've also had some companies, like a shirt printer company, print
Mhm.
out just some shirts, and then they
Mhm.
wear them out like in public. Like,
Mhm.
there was actually one girl that was found because a group of employees, I think there were 17 of them, all
Mhm.
wore this one
Wow.
shirt to
Mhm.
find this missing
Mhm.
girl that went in missing in that area.
Mhm.
And then from that, they said that they saw that and then they recognized her and
Mhm.
they actually called on it.
Mhm.
So having like shirts, I mean,
Mhm.
even you could donate that, or like your product, like you can put stuff on that.
Mhm.
Posters, just in your business,
Mhm.
you can share on social media. That doesn't
Mhm.
cost,
Right.
anything to
Yeah.
do. You can, there's just like lots of things. You can make a whole poster and put them up in your area. We
Mhm.
actually have a few companies that I've talked to. They actually will accredit their employees for some time
Mhm.
as paid time if they go and like post posters
Mhm.
or do any type of volunteer work or
Right.
something like that. They will actually pay them
Mhm.
out for like, I think it's like
Mhm.
10 hours worth. So
Right.
instead of, going to work, you
Mhm.
can do something
Mhm.
helpful and still
Well,
get
and
paid. Like, you
they're
can pay
probably
your
doing other volunteer things too. And
right.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things you mentioned is help look. I mean, if you know that you have someone missing in your area, okay, employees, we're going to take everybody out of the office for 2 hours, and we're gonna go help the local police department search, and
Mhm.
whatever it is, and I mean, I'm guessing you don't want to just go off willy-nilly, because you might actually be causing issues. But if there's an active search going on, go in and say,
Mhm.
okay, what can we do? I've got
Yeah.
20 people. What can we do?
Right. Well, we had a local, it's called Gracie's dog training
Mm-hmm.
that actually, it's not cadaver dogs, but they track on scent.
Uh-huh. Right.
And they actually went ahead and donated their services. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can donate your services
Mm-hmm.
to have these dogs be able to
Mm-hmm.
track scents of
Mm-hmm.
humans, and then just go out in searches.
Mm-hmm.
So like, they went ahead and donated their service of training these dogs for I mean, even just locally,
Mm-hmm.
they did locally and police
Mm-hmm.
dogs to train to track scent.
Mm-hmm.
So then, I mean, on one of these cases, it just led us all the way up to the road. But again,
Mm-hmm.
like, they just took their
That was more
time.
than you knew before.
Right. Right. And training these dogs to hunt for a scent of a
Mm-hmm.
person. So they did the dog training,
Mm-hmm.
they boarded them and did all
Mm-hmm.
the dog training. That was hours of their
Mm-hmm.
time. But I mean, it's something that helps out in
Right.
the whole
Mm-hmm.
community here.
Right.
So my dog is one of those dogs. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll take her and
Mm-hmm.
go tracking.
Mm-hmm.
For, if we have a missing person that's
Mm-hmm.
locally, we'll go ahead
Mm-hmm.
and see if we can track and find that person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's another thing you can do. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Well, and obviously there's financial things. If there's a
right,
reward offered, increase it.
right.
And
Yeah, you can help put
yeah.
towards that
Mm-hmm.
reward. Or I mean, right now all my donations are going towards Andrea with Erin.
Mm-hmm.
We're focusing on her
Mm-hmm.
to try to help bring her home. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it has gone towards, we've done a ton of
Mm-hmm.
posters, we laminated them
Right.
so then they're
Mm-hmm.
weatherproof. So
Mm-hmm.
that helps out too. We've done like tons of
Mm-hmm.
shirts, paid for,
Mm-hmm.
just help people going out
Mm-hmm.
and searching for her. So
Right.
there's all sorts of things you can do.
Well, and again, there's the stories that are in the media, that are making.
Yep.
So maybe, call your local police station and say, what can we do to help those that aren't in the media? What can we do? And just see from them, or just let them know,
Right.
hey, we're a resource. When you need us, we are
Yep.
here. And especially as a business, you've got a bunch of
Right.
employees, you might have 2 employees, whatever. What can you do to be helping out?
Right. Yeah. I mean, because again, there's 600,000 people that go missing just in the United States alone.
Right.
So
more
it's
than
insane.
500,000. I mean, that's a big number. And as we said, some of those are by choice, but many of them are not by choice or felt that they had no choice.
Right. Right. Exactly. So, and the thing is it might be in the situation that they might be in a abusive or relationship, or like how I was sex trafficked. It took me a long time to come to terms with that, but that's what I was. So it might be someone that it might be someone close to you. And even letting people know, hey, not just be like, well, if you need anything, I'm here for you. Like, that's great.
That's too generic.
That's too generic. But being like, hey, if you ever need a place to stay for a week or so, you're more than welcome. Like, hey, I'm here for you. Just if you need to talk, man, like anything. So
and again, folks, you're not intruding, you're caring.
Exactly. There's a difference. And I don't think people see that a lot. They think it as, oh, I'm intruding in their own space. No, you're just showing that, hey, I'm the person that cares. And if you need to, you can always reach out.
Right. Well, speaking of reaching out, because we're almost at the top of the hour, how do people find you and connect with you?
Yeah. So you can find me on my website, crimetheoriespodcast.com. You can email me directly, crimetheoriespodcast@gmail.com. I'm on all the socials, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of that. And yeah, so I mean, I'm on all the socials, my website, email. Yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help out in any way I can. So,
and again, whether, you might actually need the help or you might be wanting to help, there's both of those. Well, it's been a very serious topic today. But like I said at the start, this is something I think we all need to know more about and get more involved with. And so this has been a fascinating discussion. Adriann, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Yeah, just, you know what? It only takes a minute for someone to go missing. And it only takes a minute to share that someone's gone missing and to help find them.
I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having an incredibly interesting discussion with Adriann Barrett. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.